welcome to Crafting a Revolution, the podcast. My name is Katie Freeman, and I'm one of your hosts. Every Wednesday and Friday, we bring you interviews with female and non-binary makers of all kinds from all over the world. Today's guest is Molly Prewitt, who is a artist, a general contractor, a designer. I feel like Molly could probably do it all. Went to art school, and then found herself taking jobs in construction because it paid well and she was capable of doing them. And that led her to becoming a general contractor, running her own business. And then her and her husband, just as a hobby, are working on their house on weekends and when they have time available. So it was great getting to chat with Molly and learn about the many ways that she is very much talented. Before we hop into the interview with Molly, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the patrons over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Lee at Lee Runyon, Annette 513 Woodworks, Katie Thompson, Women of Woodworking, Kevin, Lefty's Woodshop, Christy, Twisted Twine, Jeremy Speece, Sammy, Go Sammy Lee, Rachel, Moody Makes, Bonnie, Tool Mom Bonnie, toolmomstore.com, Laura, Oakley Soap Company, Brandy, Studio Obey, Lee, the Rainbow Carver, Ellen, Little Bear Furniture, and Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you so much for your ongoing support, helping to produce 2 episodes a week, every week. And if you would like to get your name added to this list, if you've been listening to the podcast and you've been meaning to go, Katie, yes, I want to give the podcast $1, $3, or $5 a month to help produce 2 episodes a week, every week, then you certainly can. You can head on over to patreon.com/crafting a revolution and choose from the tiers over there, no matter what tier you pick. I guarantee you, your name will be added to the list and you will be thanked at the top of every episode, every week. So head on over to patreon.com/crafting a revolution and check it out. Join the pod squad. All right, no further ado, let's hop on into the interview with Molly Prewitt. All right, well, Molly, I like to start by asking my guests to introduce themselves. So would you do that for me?
So my name is Molly Prewitt, and I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with my husband, Michael. And we have a cat. We're down to a cat. We used to have lots and lots of animals and children, but we're now typically empty nesters. I'm a general contractor. I build custom homes and do remodels in Santa Fe. And on the weekends, my husband and I, we work on our house. And when we weren't working on our house, we've always done projects. Building and otherwise, and teaching ourselves how to do different skills and things like that. So we really, have fun together. That's our hobby.
Awesome. I will admit I did not know you were a general contractor. I knew about like the other side of things that you do, but not that part.
I on Instagram, that's the main thing I get is people are like, what? And recently I had a woman who's kind of helping me kind of organize, and she's like, Molly, I had no idea. And I said, I know, it's kind of hard for me to pull those two together, like professional and, Mike and Molly's house. So
right.
I've been a builder. I've been in construction for over 20 years. So it's a big part of my life and who I am.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to get into that part of your journey for sure, but I want to also start with like the broader question of what is your story, starting with like tiny baby Molly, like where'd you grow up, to like where you're at now.
Tiny baby. See, the thing is I'm 53, and so there's many decades.
That's okay. I'm here for the full story. I am here for it.
There's going to be a lot of editing. So my family is very Midwestern.
Okay.
My parents are from Northern Kentucky and Southeastern Ohio. And as growing up, as my family there reminded me, those were my people.
Mhm.
They moved out to Albuquerque when I was a year old, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Very different from, you know, that area that they grew up in the Midwest. And so I really consider myself, an Albuquerque Canyon. It's like, but I also have this very different, Midwestern connection. So yeah, I grew up there. I grew up in a household very middle class. My dad was a scientist, but both parents were really into the arts, really into music. Like we were a very crafty family. This was, the 70s. It was just like a, very kind of, my dad macrameed our canopy bed on our, and it took him years.
Right.
And he would come up and work on, we'd be like getting ready for bed, and later on he'd be working on a row. And that's just kind of how we grew up. So I also grew up with really this the sense of that they gave us that they really pushed us to do things and
Mhm.
experience things. And they were very nice parents. So they were they were always just like, you guys are awesome. Yes, I grew up really having confidence
Mhm.
that, oh, I can do these things. And and they were really spectacular at that. They didn't really drill down into the perfectionism of
Mhm.
things. And so I think that was also something, if anything, as an adult, maybe I had to overcome and really had to learn how to be a good craftsperson.
Mhm.
Um, so that was my childhood, was just really growing up. And, and then in high school, I took a lot of the industrial arts classes. And then when I went off to college, I got a sculpture degree and dance choreography, where I was kind of meshing these kind of mixed media. And I
Mhm.
was making huge, big metal sculptures. So I was learning how to weld. I learned, I knew a wood shop inside and out. And outside of when I finished college, I was like, I'm going to be an artist.
Mhm.
This is my 20s. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. Um, and to sustain that, I would work construction, doing welding jobs. And it paid well. It was fast.
Mhm.
I was the head of a, a theater set construction. So I had the opportunity to also teach people that had never touched tools before how to use tools. And that was a real exciting kind of time where, I'd work all day at the warehouse, building sets, having students come in. And then at night, I was either building my sculptures or rehearsing for the next show I had. But I was just intense.
Mhm.
Um, and at some point, I kind of burned out and kind of got a little lost, really. It's just kind of like, what am I going to do with my life? I happened to meet my first husband at the time. And, he was also really into do it yourself stuff. Like I moved around, but I always had a garden, was
Mhm.
always like changing things. But the marriage was not great. It was pretty bad. And I did have a child out of that marriage. And once again, when I got out of that, I was just like, what am I going to do? I'm 30. I have a baby.
Mhm.
Um, I was still doing some dance. I was still doing some guest choreography stuff, but nothing was really like, really
Mhm.
pulling and holding me. Um, but a few years, I met Michael, and I see Michael in some ways is a kind of a mixture of my dad and my brother. I have some of the same personalities. And I go back to like, he was always a big cheerleader. He just assumed I could do it. And if I didn't, he'd be right there to be like, oh, this is how you tile.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is how you lay a wood floor. Um, and I have to say, Michael, I think what he saw was that I had a real talent for building things. And although I wasn't interested in being a sculptor artistically, I really loved construction.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of launched there in my early 30s. And the first thing I did was I bought an old rundown house and flipped it. And Michael and my parents would come on the weekends to help me. And during the week, I just kind of put it together. And that was my first kind of like, oh, I can do this. And I learned so much.
Yeah.
And then from there, I hired a general contractor to build a spec house. And he kind of, again, he was great. He was just like, you want to learn how to build? I'll show you how to build. And when that project, we sold it, we didn't make any money. I was like, oh, I have to go and make a living now.
Yeah.
Michael was in school, so it was really like I have to. And my cousin is an architect, and he lives in Canada. And he's like, oh, Molly, he went to the University of New Mexico, which is in Albuquerque. I was in Santa Fe, an hour north at this point. He said, oh, I have an old college friend who has a design build company. I literally called the guy up and I was like, would you hire me? And he did. And, that was where I really like formally was trained as a construction manager. And just from there, went through a couple different companies, kept building that, what I call the filing cabinet of, every job you'd learn something else and something else and something else to apply. And I just kept building and building on that. And about, I think it was 2013, I was like, okay, I'm going to go and be a general contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Went out on my own. I had a business partner for a few years who was one of my best friends. But that's kind of it.
Okay. So, I mean, for one, taking even in high school, like all the industrial tech classes, I have to imagine in the 70s, you were the only girl.
I wasn't.
Really?
So high school, let's see. High school, I would have been in from 82 to 86.
Okay.
It could be geographic area. I don't know. Because this is, the area I grew up in. I also feel that the 80s, there was this resurgence of kind of, you could do it all. So I think maybe, me and my girlfriends had mothers who were really coming at the end of this civil rights for women.
Gotcha.
So I think there was a little bit of that, So there may have been one other girl. I mean, it wasn't like there was half of us, but there was always one or two. I always just tended to gravitate to men for friendships. It wasn't until I was in a really probably this last decade that I've really worked on my female relationships. And realized that there was a real need for me to do that just as a human and to grow. So,
yeah, I would say that I didn't really, I mean, I did have some female friends like from college and stuff, but like, especially work-wise, I didn't connect with women until I became a mom. And then I was like able to connect on that level. And I think just personally, because I am like one of the least girliest girls I probably have ever met. And so I just don't like going and getting nails done or makeup and shopping or any of the stuff that like the women around me were doing was never something I had an interest in like doing with. And they never had an interest in like, I could talk tools and like making, and I did in a manufacturing technology was my degree in college. So like even I remember like that was my degree. And then like my roommate, who's also became my best friend, like we've been best friends now for like 20 years. She was an English major. And so she would sit there and talk about like, all the classical literature she had to read and write papers on it, which I was like, you're out of your mind for wanting to ever want to do that. I do not understand it. But then she would like look at the like widgets I would be bringing in from classes, learning to run like a CNC and a metal lathe and welding and all that stuff. And she would just be like, I just don't get it. Like we just have nothing in common as far as that would go, So it was like, I honestly didn't have much of a problem being the only like one of two in my college degree program of women. I didn't have much of an issue like hanging with the guys, except for I did really get tired of like butt and fart jokes and dick jokes after a while. But and some professors like flat out telling me I didn't belong in that space, but still it's like I could never really gravitate towards women. I had a harder time communicating with them. I think that's why part of the drive for like this podcast and stuff, I was like, I need to find my people, the people I can talk to, who understand the gender issues of being in this space, as well as like just being able to geek out about tools. Like I need somebody who can do that.
Oh yeah, because it's so layered, and it doesn't have to just be one thing. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, I know there's a group of women, because I'm the same way. I don't like to shop. I don't do my nails. I don't, my daughter, who is a cosmetologist and starting at 9, she was into all of that. Mm-hmm. And I think Michael was better about like sitting down and painting her nails than I was. Or I was like, really, baby.
Yes.
But I think what you said, you can still find your people, and you can hit, and this is why I love the DIY community that at least you and I are in. It seems very centric to women.
Yeah.
At least this little piece, the little bubble we're in. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly exciting because you have a better chance, if like you were in college, I was the same way. I had like 3 women that I could relate to. And it was like, really, if you don't relate to one of them, then you're just like, well, you're shit out of luck.
Yeah.
I don't like you. So I'm not going to be your friend.
Right.
But I have to say, some of my longest friendships was a woman who I went to, she was this amazing sculptor. We're still friends. Mm-hmm. We were roommates. It's kind of the same way, because when you do bond, you're like, okay, we're going to stay together.
Yes.
There's not that many.
Yeah. And I'm glad you bring up the DIY space, because to me, DIY and actually makerspace go together. And I feel like, yes, there's a much bigger group of women in that space. And it's more accepted, I think, in that space, versus like trade, and also versus like traditional craft. Like those spaces.
Good point. Yeah.
Those spaces do not have much diversity outside of white men. Like there's just not a lot. Maybe in trade you get outside of white men and you can get maybe more Latino men, who are going into that space, but still it's men dominated. Hey, Pond Squad. I would like to give a big shout out and thanks to this week's sponsor, Rockport Works. They offer safety footwear that suits people's occupation and lifestyle by incorporating performance, safety, and style into every shoe and boot. Each shoe features a slip-resistant outsole and a toe cap, varying between steel, alloy, and composite. Other features such as electrical hazard and shock protection are also available depending on your safety needs. So Rockport delivers extraordinary technology-based comfort using the latest advances in construction and design to create both modern and classic shoe styles. So whatever the outfit, they've got you covered. Their goal is to support your style, to take you from work to leisure and everything in between. Try Rockport Works for yourself and change the world without changing your shoes. Now, they offered to send me some boots, and I said, hey, look here. I got lots of boots. I got plenty of boots. I really, really, really need a shoe that's going to work for me out in the workshop. Because right now, if I don't feel like wearing my work boots, I'm wearing my tennis shoes. And not only is it hard on the tennis shoes, those aren't really the best to wear protection and safety wise out in the shop. So they sent me a pair of their True Stride work shoes, which are these slip-on shoes that have a zipper on them, and they consist of moisture wicking micro mesh liner and a leather upper, and they've got this nice little cushion in the heel that really is helpful for my lower back personally. They have these shoes available in sizes from 6 to 12 in both M and W widths. I went with W because I've got a wide foot. And I'm just going to let you know. So I went ahead and ordered my standard like 8 wides, and they do run a little bit big on me, but I love them even more for that, honestly, because that makes them easier to slip on and off. So I just slip right in, head on out to the garage, do some work, come in, take them off, don't track sawdust all over the house. So it is fantastic. The shoe, besides being super cool and comfy, also meets all ASTM safety standards and requirements. All right, so if you want to try out a pair of the True Stride shoes or any of their other work boots and shoes, head on over to Rockport Works and you can use discount code Freeman 25. That's Freeman, FREEMAN 25 to get 25% off of your purchase at checkout. So take advantage of this super sweet deal for listeners of the pod and head on over and check out Rockport Works. All right, let's head back into the episode. And so that's why it's interesting to you, like you said, like you went into construction and you did welding and stuff like that as like a job, because again, maybe like you said, there was a resurgence of kind of this like women can do anything, but I still feel like that wasn't probably a super welcoming space because it's not one now. Like it's still not a very welcoming space now.
No, and that's why, this is where again I have to like acknowledge race.
Mm-hmm.
So if people can't see me, I'm a white lady.
Yeah,
a really white lady. Can't get any whiter.
Yeah.
I grew up. Okay, again, we're looking at 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Holly Hobby, Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the predominant things that were in media.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing a reflection of myself everywhere. So when you talk about, well, the confidence that I built, I don't say like, oh, I'm just genetically like got this together.
Right.
I really have to acknowledge that the environment I was in was just layering that confidence and pushing it there. I mean, yes, I did. I've done things that other people would be like, oh, I can't believe you went out and did that. That might have some of it, but really it has to do with had this kind of an entitled, lovely middle class life. I had shit that happened to me that wasn't great along the way, but I always had that underlying sort of ability to be like, well, I can get through this. So I do think, it's not a simple answer, but
right.
I just do want to acknowledge that.
Yes. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I grew up, so I'm only, I'm a decade younger than you. So just turned 40. So I grew up in the 80s, and I kind of, when you said it, I'm kind of like reflecting on that. Like, yes, I was told, like my mom would tell me I could do anything I put my mind to. However, it was still very like gender focused, and it was still like, at least my family dynamic was still very pushed towards like, you're going to like dress in this manner, you're going to act in this manner, like this is the way that like women act to be successful.
Pantyhose were
so
still being worn
yeah.
to work. Like it was like a requirement to go to work. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, it was still very much there. And and again, because of my family dynamic, I had a lot of interest in art, and particular in like furniture design and stuff like that. But I was pushed into like, well, if you have to go that route, then go like engineering or architect or something that's going to pay the bills, right? It was seen as like, you're not going to make any money doing that. Which is really funny because my grandma worked for a construction company and was part of like Women of Construction. So it was like really funny that that's what was like, brought down to me, because you would have thought like it would have been seen as a potential like place to go, but it wasn't.
I don't know if that was maybe a post World War II, because in Santa Fe, some of these women in the 50s and 60s, we have some of the most famous general contractors who are also designers.
Mm-hmm.
But I am one of the only female general contractors that I run into.
Yeah.
In my town.
Yeah.
So it's not there now.
Yeah. Well, and so I think you make number 3 female general contractors that I've had on the podcast.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
Hey, us.
The other 2 are on the East Coast. But yeah, I think it's awesome. And it's always interesting to me, like the reason why each of them went into it. Like the other 2 stories, it was basically the one was, well, I want to learn how to do it all. And the other was like super frustrated with dealing with general contractors. And so it was like, I'm just going to go become one. So I don't have to deal with them anymore.
I mean, I think that's really valid.
Yeah.
I don't understand why more women don't get into it. I mean, I do and I don't. I understand why they don't. But I really got into it for money. It was good money. That was the thing that always brought me back to construction. It was something I could drop into.
Yeah.
You made good money doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something. So like I've gone the corporate career, route. That's like, I still have a job that's like more corporate-y. But lately I've been like, I really, for my soul, need to change jobs. So I've been looking and hunting, because until this other fun stuff becomes like profitable, I have to still bring money into the household. And so
I can't believe, when I see all your projects that you do and then this podcast, I'm just like, holy crap. Like,
well, I have to do all this stuff. Energy. I have to do all this. This is the stuff that feeds me though, right? So it's like, you're not the first. A lot of people like will message me and be like, how do you do it all? And I'm like, I don't see it that way, because it's all like the stuff that you guys are seeing, right? You don't see the job stuff, but the other stuff that you see me do, it's like, it's all fun stuff. So I don't know. It's hard to explain. It just feels natural to like, oh, I've got 20 minutes. I'm going to like do this.
Well, and I think that's because people will ask me sometimes, like, how are you getting so much whatever done?
Yeah.
Sewing or like, and I'm like, well, what do you do in the evenings? So, honestly, what do you do? And, there are a lot of evenings I have from 6 to 9. That's 3 hours.
Right.
You get a lot done. Michael was out last night working, he came home from work and he got himself right out to the shop. And he worked for 4 hours, and I think that's when people are like, oh, and I have to remind myself, like, you're like, I got 20 minutes. Like, hell, I'm doing, I'm in there doing.
Yeah, exactly. And when it's something you enjoy, it's not like it's not a slog, right? It's not. Right. Now, I mean, I am the first to admit there is a very, very, very long laundry list of things I should get done. that would probably like start to make me money if I actually got them done. But they're the stuff that I'm like, carve for 20 minutes or do another 20 minutes on the computer today. I'm going to choose carve. Like, that's what I'm going to choose to go do.
Yeah.
And also, I should very much state that what people see on Instagram is like, you know, a 30-second clip that I took. You don't see the whatever, the stuff that I failed at, or that might have been the only 30 seconds that I spent in the shop that day.
Oh, that's a good point. You're like, yeah, there might be like, she's been there for hours. You're like,
yeah, no.
30 seconds.
Yes. It. Yeah, that was it.
Now, I have a question for you. Do your kids come into your shop at all? Are they interested at all?
So I have one who could care less, except for to give me the list of things he expects me to make for him. Okay. And then I have the other, my youngest, my daughter, who is actually really interested. And so, you know, I do let her out in the shop with me if I'm not using anything like, you know, dangerous that throws stuff, or if I'm not like, even if I have started letting her out there, even when I'm cutting like on the miter saw, I just make sure she's got like hearing protection and all of that stuff on. And it's usually kind of like I had another guest say it was like kind of like a co-play. Like I've given her like the box of scraps and like the bottle of glue and the everything so that she can make her own project while I'm making my own project. And then, you know, on occasion, if there's something that she can help me with, because she's always asking, what can I do, you know, as part of this project, then I'll bring her over. Like she helped with the chisel and mallet, taking off like bark off of a live edge, you know, tabletop and stuff like that. Like,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, you know, like stuff that it's like I still supervise because, you know, and having to teach her like, okay, we don't hit it with the pointed end like aimed at ourselves. Like, let's work on this, you know. You know, but she's really interested, and I think she's also into dance, and she's into music, and she's into like, I think she's gonna be an artist of some kind, probably. Yeah. Whatever that ends up being. But she's also like, you know, she's doing a makeover to herself every day. Like she like on the weekend, she has like 3 wardrobe changes at a minimum generally per day, which I don't understand, right? That's like not my world. I do not get it, but I'm like, you do you. You know, you go ahead and rock whatever you want to rock. So she's like all dolled up and in a dress and working out in the shop, and that's fine, right? As long as she's safe about it. So,
oh, absolutely.
You know, we have conversations where it's like, she was like, well, she's like, can you do more than one thing? And I said, absolutely, you can be more than one thing, you know, when you grow up. And she's like, all right. Yeah, I think I'm going to be a pop star and woodworker. And I said, okay, like, that's makes complete sense.
Good balance.
Yeah.
That's a big career choice, the two.
Yes. So I look forward to that. Now, my son is actually very much an artist too, but he's much more sketch. Like he
likes to like notebook, sit down.
Yes, I mean, that's on his Christmas list is like notebooks, because he just sits down and sketch and sketch and sketch, and you know, that's his thing. He doesn't want to be anywhere near the building stuff. You know, but I am happy to both see that they like, and my wife and I both encourage their creative side. Like, I don't know. I feel pretty strongly that even if they go down like a engineering path or whatever else, I'm like, you're always going to need to have a creative outlet. Like that's what feeds your soul. So that's what you need to have.
And it's so, I think there's, you know, it seems very normal, you know, maybe it just being an art school, because a lot of the teachers were teachers and then they had, you know, their art career. And so I was very exposed to, you got to kind of, you got to do both.
Yep.
To, you know, to make it.
Yes. You know. Unfortunately.
because I would have to bring our kids, onto our work site when they're really little. And I remember one of the things we would do was hand them a roll of tape and be like, go for it.
Right.
And they would like go and make these like onto a wall and make
Yep.
these mosaics. They would make shoes. They would this is terrible. They'd tie their feet up and tape. And then I'd be like, we need to go to Home Depot. And they're like clopping along. I'm like, we're going to have to take those tape feet off. Feet off. They're like, nah. I'm sure I have a reputation in Home Depot. Decades of bringing my children in weird costumes and taped up.
It's okay. I actually want to like talk a little bit more about that though, because I've had talks just like in professional career too of, again, my professional career has put me in many a place where I still am one of maybe two, and sometimes the only female in the space. And so like the look you get when you're like, I have to leave by this time to pick my children up from school. And they're just like, what? Huh? And it's like, yeah, because your wives are doing that for you. And you just have no understanding of like the balance that goes into like, you have to give me that time. Like it's, so I'm curious about that, about you showing up at a work site with your kids, like.
Well, so this was when they were really little.
Yeah.
This is when I was doing the flip and everything. So it was really my own, like, no, okay. I didn't have a boss.
Gotcha.
Once I went to go work for somebody else, at that point, Michael and I made the decision that he was going to only be able to work part-time. Because you can't do it all.
Yeah.
And we had Sophia. So I have a daughter who's my stepdaughter and my daughter from my first marriage. They're 6 months apart.
Okay.
Sophia, my daughter, we had her full time. My stepdaughter, we had half time. So there was all this back and forth.
Yeah.
And so really, Michael took off years, to do that. Now, what's interesting, and we still kind of like, is I at the time worked at a place where cell phone range was very minimal. So you'd have to call the office to get me. It was kind of a hassle.
Yeah.
Michael was the pickup. He was the drop off. He was the pickup. He did after school activities. He met with the other parents.
Yep.
That was how it was. I would still get moms who would call me and be like, can Sophia play after school? And I'd be like, I don't really fucking know.
Right.
I don't know. Did you call Michael? Because I really, so it's almost like the opposite, where I was a little angry, like I am trying to focus right now on because we were lucky enough to financially that he didn't have to work full time. But there's been times where we have both, and it's been a mess. It's just a mess. It's two full-time working parents trying to have a career. You have to have a very forgiving, or not even, I shouldn't even say that. That's not even, you have to have a boss that has an idea of how it is to move through the world.
Yes. Right.
I don't know how else to say that, but yeah.
But it's amazing how much they like don't. It really is like, I mean, now the job that I have now is very, very flexible because I work as a consultant. And so it's like, like I set the times, I have more power in that situation. But coming from the corporate world, it was like, well, you're expected to work 60 hours a week. Like that's just the expectation. We pay you for 40, but you're expected to work 60 hours a week. And, and then it's frowned upon when it's like, well, why are you leaving at this time every day when your male, coworkers are staying till like 7 o'clock at night? And it's like, because I have children, I have to pick them up. I have to go home. I have to make them dinner. I have to.
Someone has to do it.
Yes.
And unless your wife is coming over to my house to do it. Now, so my daughter is a mom, and she's a single mom. And I don't I know it has come out of my mouth to her
Mhm.
before, and I kind of like try and pull it back, which is, oh, your boss is so great with,
Mhm.
which she is. Her boss is very supportive of
Mhm.
her. She is a female. She has no children. She doesn't know what it is to,
Right, right.
and yet so I think because my daughter works when she's there, she's incredibly present.
Mhm.
I have a feeling this woman just doesn't want to lose, be like losing. But there's been times, as a single parent, like you don't have anyone.
Nope. Mm-mm.
And I remember, I was a single parent for 3 years, and I remember like getting strep throat or something. And luckily, my parents lived next door. And so I
Mhm.
could call them to say, I need you to come take Sophia because I can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
In those moments, I would be like, oh my God, how do other
Right.
people do
Right.
this if you don't
Right.
have that support system? So
Mhm.
with Sophia, my mom, who also lives in the same town she is, we're always just like right there for her to
Mhm.
make sure she feels she's got that support.
Mhm.
Because you don't, like you said, you don't.
Hey makers, today's episode is sponsored in part by toolmomstore.com. At toolmomstore.com, you can find any and all tool-based merchandise for all genders, all sizes. They've got mugs, they've got shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. I have one of the shirts myself that has the hashtag woodwork her on it. And I also have a couple of the mugs that define what and who is a tool chick. So super excited with the merchandise that I have. I know that you will be satisfied as well. And also great discount for those of you who listen to the podcast. At checkout, if you enter the code MAKERMOM, you will get a 20% discount off any of the merchandise that you buy. So that's just toolmomstore.com. All right, let's head back into the action.
People
No,
don't get it.
they don't. And I mean, that's not just, that's also not to speak ill of like my wife. I don't want people to get the misconception that she doesn't like participate and also do these things. But we are in kind of a situation like you and your husband where it's like my job's more flexible. So I take on the doctor's appointments, the dentist, the haircuts, the like picking taking the kids to school, picking them up most of the time. Like, and she does what she can, but she is in that corporate world still struggling with like all the men around her being like, what do you mean you want to leave early to like go do the like
Yeah.
I just don't
And I
understand it.
have a feeling I put that pressure on myself
Mm-hmm.
because, again, I was working with just men
Yep.
where, it was falling to their spouse
Yep.
to do stuff. Um, so probably subconsciously was just like, I'm not going to say anything. Like the kid's sick today, but
Yep. Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Children.
And the reality is like I think it would be an amazing cultural shift if the parenting load was just as even on like men in the relationship so that I mean it would change everything, right? Like
Well, so here's my view: men as caregivers. Oh my God, they're so awesome. I mean, like, I would drill down into the details and I would watch my friends, the female friends, be like, so like not letting, and then, you see these memes of like, then the men take them and, they forget to wear their pants out the
right,
door.
right.
But there is some of that, and it may be not just a gender thing, but maybe a person, but there is some of that that I think is very good for children to have around.
Yes.
Like, I didn't have to wear pants to school today.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
there is like I think there's like, a great balance to both
Yes.
structure and all that, and then be like, what are we gonna, I
Yes.
don't know.
Yes. No, I completely agree. It's like, especially when you have little kids, right? Like when they're like really little, Like you can get wrapped around, at least I did, wrapped around the axle about like every little detail about like feeding routines and like
Yes.
bedtime and bath time and blah, 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 blah. So that I'd be so over anxious that even though like I had a partner who's like willing and able and wants to be right there, I almost would like not allow it because it's like, no, it has to be like step A, step B, step C, step, whereas like she was just like, I just put the kid in water and they're clean. Like,
Right.
And
you're like, but you didn't scrub their head properly.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes. And so it was like, it has taken a long time and I still don't probably release as much control as I should. But it took some understanding of like when I have to be gone for like work travel or whatever, right? It's like I have to let go and be like, they will still be alive when I come home. And that is the important part.
I know you do have to remind yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I remember I left for an overseas trip and Sophia was probably about 10. And I never really felt I was controlling like her, but obviously I was enough in her life. And so the whole trip, her whole thing with Michael was, so what would we do if mom wasn't around? And he goes, every day it got a little darker and a little deeper. Finally, like day 5, she's like, so mom is dead. What's happening with me? But I did come back.
Yes. It's fine. Yes.
It was fine.
Well, I always love that I get reports while I'm gone that the kids are perfect angels. And then like when I come back, and then when I come back, it's like they just like let it all fly, right? It's like, okay, we were good. You told us to be good. We were good for their parent. Now you're home and screw you. I'm gonna like do everything under the sun.
My therapist once told me that's because, she felt safe with me. And I was like, what kind of bullshit is he telling me? It's no, she's just being ornery in my
That's
presence.
right. That's right.
Save my ass.
Yes. You're just punishing me because I was gone. That's the reality of what's going on here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, back on topic.
Oh.
So you are currently still doing the general contractor thing, right? And working at home or?
Well, this is a good kind of turn of things.
Okay.
So I do very large homes. Santa Fe is similar to like Aspen, where we have a lot of wealth, a lot of poverty, and a lot of uber wealth. Second, third homes are not uncommon here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what feeds that's how I make a living.
Right.
So a lot of us in this town make our living. And there's so many things I love about it because probably some of the things I've been able to customize and really experiment with, I would have never been able to do if I was doing a smaller home or, less custom homes. There's also another stress that goes on with it. And I have a reputation for being able to take on difficult projects. I just got a call the other day. And I think it's also really exhausting. And so when COVID hit, I had some projects going on and we had to close down for a little bit. And when we opened back up last summer, I was just like, let's get these done. Mm-hmm. I was really tired. I was really feeling the strain of probably just the pandemic on some level. And so I just, I talked to Michael and I said, I want to take a break. And how I do my business, which is a whole nother topic, but Michael and I years ago were in deep debt and we got out of that debt. And so we live a fairly frugal life, but we also, what am I trying to say? So as a general contractor, some years you have high profits and other years not so much.
Mhm.
So I don't go with the wave of
Mhm.
my income. So my income's always the same. And so I had enough kind of shoveled away. At that point I said, I just want to take some time off.
Mhm.
So I want to explain that to people because I think a lot of people are like, how are you taking time off? Well,
Right. Yeah.
savings.
Mhm.
So I closed up. I had to lay off I have one employee. I laid him off. And I've always loved what I do. I have chronic pain, and in some ways, I've always said it helps me mentally with my pain that I get up every morning and go to work.
Mhm.
But I think I just had a whole head shift of like not being able to really jump back in the same way I was doing it.
Mhm.
And I know what I want to do. I know how I want to do it differently, and that is the whole affordable housing
Mhm.
piece of this. I don't know how to get there right now.
Mhm.
Or if I know how to get there, I'm not sure I want to put my time and energy doing things that don't thrill me, like
Yeah.
grant writing and
Yeah.
things like that. So I'm trying to really, I've just kind of taken, I call it my sabbatical.
Mhm.
And that's what I've done. I've taken a sabbatical, and I know everyone's like, there's so much work out there. The quality of what I'm getting asked to do
Mhm.
is seems to be consistent with me, at least, and a couple of my colleagues, is material costs are so high.
Right.
And so when a client comes to me and says, well, can't you give me a deal on your labor? Oh, God,
Mhm.
I just have to take a huge deep breath because it's not them. I mean,
Mhm.
I get it, but I am really about you pay people what
Yep.
they should be paid to do. And
Mhm.
if and one reason I have the lovely ability of having bigger clients is I get to, everyone gets a living wage,
Right.
whether they're a trade or not for me.
Right.
And so I just haven't. I mean, I am working some. I'm helping, working for another general contractor, helping him with some projects, organize some
Mhm.
projects, until I can kind of wrap my head around of like how I'm going to move forward.
Mhm.
I mean, it's going to be building. I'm just not really sure what that
Right.
new thing is going to be. So,
Yep. I just want to say, like, I don't think you're alone. In fact, I know you're not alone. Like, COVID has had the pandemic has had this effect of people pausing and maybe just assessing and being like, okay, if I'm going to spend all of my energy on something, I want it to be something that I care about, right? That like
yeah, yeah,
lights me up in more ways than one. Um, and so, especially, if it's, something similar to me, it's like stuff around maybe, social justice issues and things like that, and making the world a better place and breaking down systems and all of that fun stuff. And so, I mean, that's a lot of what has me looking for a different job is like, I just can't continue to work with these places that don't hold the same values as me anymore. I just can't. So, so I'm like, I need to look at something else. So I definitely know you're not alone there. I feel like there's a big wave of people who have had this. And that's why, they're calling it, there's a lot of reasons that they're calling it the Great Recession, but a big part of it is like this big shift of, I'm tired of giving all my energy to this corporation that doesn't give a crap about me,
yes. And sometimes what I get caught up in is things that I'm talented at are not necessarily things I want to be doing.
Yep.
And so I do go back to that kind of work ethic where I'm like, I need to make a living and I do enjoy this. But then I start going down, you know, what I'm good at, which is really complicated projects,
Mhm.
lots of different balls in the air. And I come in and I'm like, this is how we're going to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's like, well, yeah, you can do that, but is it what you want to do?
Yep.
And I do get caught up in that kind of circle of like, well, because it's not bad. I mean, that's why
Right.
I'm like, it's not totally bad. Like,
Right.
I love these beautiful houses, but I have to say, I also don't.
Yep.
I live in 1,100 square foot house.
Hmm.
It's not considered a tiny house by any means,
Right.
but I mean, I do have my own workshop
Hmm.
on top of that, but I just, it's that fills me up. Like, I don't have this
Yeah.
huge urge to have these bigger houses, and yet that's what I do for a
Right.
living.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm with you. And probably somewhat off topic, but just throwing this out there, like in my area, and it started before the pandemic, but I feel like they were onto something. Um, there's an area of town where they built a very small community of tiny homes that they put all together and intentionally meant to give people who don't make a living wage a way to like get into owning their own property, through various systems. But I would think with your skills of just even understanding how like construction works, that there could be like, potential there.
Well, and that's so my construction company is called Nest Builders. Another big thing I did was I actually changed the name. I was Buffalo Builders. And I when I closed up, I was like, I just don't feel
Mhm.
Buffalo. So I changed my name to Nest Builders. And the whole idea I have with the affordable housing is here right now, our medium house, I think, is now close to $600,000. Yeah. Saying this.
Yeah.
Now, I just told you we have a lot of really super wealthy and we have
Yeah.
impoverished. So if I look at people that the trades that are coming,
Yeah.
they're making $40,000-$50,000 a year.
Yeah.
They cannot afford that house. And so I've been looking at how another company here, Affordable Housing's been doing their model. And I'm like, you almost have it. But really what I want to do is build a small development. And it
Mhm.
would be, 1,800 square foot houses.
Yeah.
It would be made for, the teachers, the
Yep.
firemen, the
Yep.
middle class working. And but here's the kicker. These houses would also be made with craftsmanship that would help the maintenance long term.
Mhm.
So out here we have a lot of flat roofs. So it would be pitched metal roofs. It would be stucco that's thick. It's not,
Yep.
we have different coats of stucco. It would be long overhangs to protect the exterior walls.
Yeah.
Things like this that would cost more,
Mhm.
like initially to
Yep.
build that house. But I would say it's when you hand a house over to somebody, immediately the maintenance, you have to start
Yep.
saving for your
Yep.
maintenance. And so that was the idea of like, well, handing them a house that at least they know, hardwood floors, it'll last forever.
Mhm.
Now, I don't want that to sell as a $450,000
Right.
house. I want it to sell as a $200,000 house. So somehow
Mhm.
I have to then come up with the money through grants, through uh, what am I trying to say? This is a
Well,
terrible elevator pitch I'm doing. Through subsidies,
yes.
through land
Yeah.
donations, and then so here in Santa Fe we have an affordable housing project.
Mhm.
So hand them the house and say you're selling this for $200,000,
Right.
and that's building that up that way, and it doesn't make any sense profit wise because you're
Right.
actually losing money.
Right.
But I'm like, we have got to support. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, we do.
Yep. Yep. I get it.
Here's my elevator pitch.
Okay, I'll take it. All right. Well, on that note, we're at the end of our time together.
Shocking.
Uh-huh.
They just flew by.
It did. It did. But I want to give you a chance to let people know how they can find you and follow along with you and all that good jazz.
All right. I am on Instagram and Facebook I'm more active probably on Instagram. I'm a little active on TikTok. But wherever you go, you can find me at Mike and Molly's house. Mike and Molly's house.
Okay.
Mike and Molly's house.
All right. Perfect. Well, thanks
This
for
has been a delight.
Yeah, yes, it's been so much fun. I really enjoyed it, even though I feel like I took us down several, maybe not directly associated paths.
That is how it is supposed to be.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So again, that was Molly Prewitt, and I will include the links on how you can follow along with her in the show notes for today's episode. Where might you find those, you ask? Well, check the description on the podcast app you're listening with, or if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, check the description box down below. And thirdly, you can head on over to freemanfurnishings.com/podcast and find the show notes for today's episode, along with all the past episodes as well. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe, like, and follow so you get notified when new episodes are released. One last thing, head on over to Instagram and follow along with the podcast at Crafting a Revolution. Okay, head on over there. And when I am not interviewing and chatting with amazing guests and putting together podcast episodes, you can find me designing and making furniture and other home decor at freemanfurnishings.com and at Freeman Furnishings across all of the social media platforms. I am active on a daily basis on Instagram and pretty close to daily on TikTok. That's at Freeman Furnishings on both of those platforms. So come on over and say hi. We are towards the end of our week, heading into the weekend. I hope you get to get out and make something. And as always, let's go craft a revolution.
She, her, they got something they want to say. Solution for the toxic masculinity.